the jewel of the kingdom. In the heart of the vast continent, nestled between towering mountains and expansive plains, lay the kingdom of Zuba. The kingdom flourished in the warmth of the sun, its lands rich with fertile soil that gave birth to bountiful crops, golden fields, and lush forests. The cities that dotted the land were filled with grand buildings crafted from the finest stone and adorned with intricate carvings and vibrant tapestries. Life here was a song of prosperity, peace, and beauty, and its people, content and joyful, carried the kingdom's legacy forward. At the center of this kingdom, standing tall and proud on a grand hill overlooking the landscape, sat the palace of King Akbar and Queen Layla. These rulers, wise and just, had led their people with fairness and understanding. Their reign had brought peace to the kingdom, ensuring that both the land and its people thrived. It was said that no ruler had ever been more beloved, for their love for each other and for their people was unwavering. But it was their daughter, Princess Naima, who captured the hearts and imaginations of the people the most. From the moment she was born, it was clear she was destined for greatness. Her skin shimmered like warm copper under the sun, her hair a cascade of midnight black, and her eyes glistened with a sparkle like the stars that filled the night sky. It was said that when she laughed, the birds would pause mid-flight to listen, and when she spoke, the very air seemed to hum with magic. As Naima grew, so did her beauty, and along with it, her belief in her own divine destiny. She was the jewel of Zuba, admired not only for her physical beauty but also for her wit and intelligence. Every corner of the kingdom had heard of her wisdom, her sharp mind, and her ability to solve problems that many of the elders could not. Yet, it was her beauty that drew most people to her. She had become a living legend, a symbol of perfection, something beyond human, as if the gods themselves had woven her form from the very fabric of the stars. But beneath the admiration of the people, there was something more, a quiet, growing pride within Princess Naima. She carried herself with an air of superiority that left no room for doubt. She believed herself to be above all others. And why wouldn't she? She was told every day that she was destined for greatness. Her father, the king, spoke often of her beauty and intelligence, and her mother, the queen, showered her with endless love and encouragement. But these praises, instead of grounding Naima, only fueled her belief that she was not just the daughter of a king, but the chosen one, someone unlike any other who had ever lived. The princess's pride. From an early age, Naima had been told that she was special. The elders spoke of her as if she were a goddess, sent to guide the kingdom into an era of greatness. They whispered that her skin was like the finest copper from the farthest mines, that her hair resembled the night sky, and that her eyes, like stars, held the power to see the truth of all things. As she grew older, Naima became more aware of her beauty, and her pride blossomed. She walked through the palace gardens with a regal grace, her every movement perfect, her every step deliberate. And when suitors came from distant lands, seeking her hand in marriage, she greeted them with polite, yet dismissive, smiles. None of them were worthy of her. Some were too short, others too loud, too young, too old, or simply not grand enough. Naima knew that she deserved more. She was a jewel, a treasure, and no one, could compare. The suitors came in waves, each more impressive than the last. Warriors with scars from distant battles, noblemen with riches beyond counting, and even kings from neighboring lands who had seen the beauty of Zuba and sought to claim it for their own. But Naima turned them all away. To her, they were all too simple, too flawed. And as each suitor was rejected, her legend grew. Her name was spoken with awe, not just in Zuba but in every kingdom for miles. People spoke of her as a princess who could never be outshone, who was perfect in every way, whose beauty and intellect surpassed all others. And Naima believed it. She did not need love, she thought. What was love compared to admiration? What were humble suitors compared to the greatness she was destined to inherit? She believed that one day, the perfect prince, the one worthy of her, would come, and until then, she would remain unbothered by the advances of those she deemed beneath her. One evening, as the golden light of the setting sun bathed the palace in a soft glow, King Akbar sat in the royal gardens, watching his daughter as she walked through the blooming flowers, her head held high, her eyes distant. He was proud of her, but as the years passed, a deep concern began to grow within him. "My child," he called gently, his voice filled with both affection and worry. Naima turned to face him, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Yes, father." "The crown is a heavy burden," the king said, his gaze soft but piercing. "It is not just a symbol of power, but a responsibility. No man or woman can bear it alone. You are the jewel of this kingdom, Naima, but even the brightest jewel needs care. Tell me, what is it that you seek? What do you wish for, deep in your heart?" Naima, confident in her own thoughts, smiled and shook her head lightly. "I seek nothing but what is mine, father. The kingdom will bow to me, as it should. It has already chosen me. I am its future." King Akbar watched her, his eyes filled with a sorrow that she did not yet understand. "Do not mistake your beauty for your worth, my child. There is more to a crown than its shine. Remember, even the sun must set, and in the dark, we see who we truly are." Naima's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "You worry too much, father. The future is mine, and I shall wear the crown with pride." And so, with her heart full of certainty, she turned from him, the weight of his words slipping away like water from a stone. The stranger in the forest. It was on a day when the sky was thick with the golden light of the midday sun, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the air, that a stranger arrived in the kingdom of Zuba. He was not like the other visitors who came seeking the favor of the royal family. His attire was simple, far from the rich silks and fine robes that most noblemen wore. His cloak was made of earth-tone fabric that seemed to blend with the forest, the threads rough and unpolished, unlike the smooth, luxurious garments of the courtiers. A wooden staff, adorned with intricate carvings, was clasped firmly in his hand. The stranger's name was Ekon. His face was not known in the courts of Zuba, and his presence was unlike any other. As he entered the gate of the palace, the guards eyed him suspiciously, and whispers spread quickly through the palace halls. Who was this man who came alone, dressed in humble attire and carrying nothing of value? But Ekon moved through the palace grounds with an air of quiet confidence. He did not boast of titles or wealth. He simply walked, as though the land itself had called him there. When the court saw him, they laughed. The nobles, dressed in their finest silks, smirked and whispered among themselves. "Who is this man?" they mocked. "A beggar come to beg for the princess's favor." Yet despite the laughter, Naima's eyes were drawn to him. There was something about his stillness, the way he moved with a quiet, unassuming dignity. Unlike the men who had come to woo her with promises of gold and power, he made no such show. It was her curiosity that led her to him. Naima, though proud and accustomed to suitors who competed for her attention, was intrigued by this man. She had heard his name spoken in hushed tones and had seen the way he walked through the kingdom with no entourage, no wealth, and no claim to greatness. Her interest grew, and before the court could say more, she rose from her throne and gestured for the stranger to approach. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with a note of challenge. "And what is it that you seek in this kingdom?" Ekon bowed his head respectfully but did not kneel. His gaze was steady as he answered. "I am Ekon, Princess Naima. I seek nothing but an audience with you. I have traveled far and wide, but it is here, in your kingdom, that I seek to speak with you." The court fell silent, unsure of how to react. Who was this man to speak so casually to the princess? But Naima, with a curious gleam in her eyes, beckoned him to speak. "You come to my kingdom and ask for an audience with me. Yet, you bring no gold, no jewels, no titles. What makes you think you are worthy to speak with me?" Naima's words were sharp, though there was no malice in them. It was simply her way of testing the stranger who dared to approach her without the trappings of power. Ekon did not flinch. Instead, he smiled softly, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet wisdom. "Because, Princess Naima," he said, his voice steady and calm, "I do not seek your perfection. I do not wish to change you or mold you into someone you are not. I only seek to walk beside you, to share in your journey. I seek the truth of who you are, not the image that others have built for you." Naima blinked, taken aback. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. She had spent her life surrounded by men and women who flattered her, praised her beauty, and spoke of her greatness. Yet here was a man who sought none of these things. He was not captivated by her beauty, nor was he trying to win her favor with promises of wealth or titles. Instead, he spoke of something deeper, something that made Naima pause. The princess was perplexed, and yet, something inside her stirred. She had never before met a man who seemed so unshaken by her pride, so undaunted by the allure of her beauty. His words, though simple, seemed to cut through the facade she had built around herself. In that moment, Naima felt a flicker of vulnerability, a realization that there was more to life than perfection, than the image of greatness she had cultivated. As the court murmured, Naima stood in silence for a long moment, weighing his words. Then, with a small, almost imperceptible smile, she nodded. "Very well," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I will marry you." That night, after the grand feast had ended and the stars twinkled brightly above the palace, Naima found herself walking alone in the palace gardens. The moonlight bathed the flowers in a silvery glow, and the sound of the night winds rustling the trees filled the air. She had agreed to marry a stranger, a man who had brought nothing of value, nothing but his words. Why had she said yes? She asked herself this question as she walked, her mind filled with a swirl of thoughts and emotions. There was something different about Ekon, something that had drawn her in, something that had made her feel both curious and unsettled. She had spent her life surrounded by men who sought her beauty, her wealth, and her title. But Ekon had sought none of that. He had not tried to impress her or win her favor. Instead, he had spoken to her heart. It was that very truth that she could not ignore. Perhaps, just perhaps, she was not the perfect princess everyone thought her to be. Perhaps there was something more to be learned, something greater than what she had always believed. As she stood beneath a tree, her hand gently touching its rough bark, Naima felt a stirring inside her. It was a deep, unspoken desire for something different. Something real. For the first time, she wondered what it would be like to live without the weight of her perfection, to let go of the pride that had defined her for so long. And so, that night, in the quiet of the garden beneath the watchful eyes of the stars, Princess Naima made a decision. She would marry Ekon. She would leave behind the life of perfection she had known and step into a journey with someone who saw her not as a princess, but as a person, someone who believed she had more to offer than just beauty and grace. The path ahead was uncertain, but Naima felt something stir within her heart, a yearning for truth, for humility, and perhaps, for the first time, for love that was not bound by pride or expectation. The journey to the cave. The night after the wedding feast, the moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the kingdom. Princess Naima stood at the palace gates, her heart both heavy and light. The banquet had been grand, the guests had rejoiced, but now, as the laughter faded and the people drifted to their homes, Naima found herself at the edge of something unknown. Something far beyond the realm of riches, beauty, and perfection she had known her whole life. Ekon, the mysterious stranger who had captured her curiosity, stood before her now, calm and steady, his humble robe flowing gently in the night breeze. Without speaking, he beckoned her to follow him, leading her away from the palace grounds and into the vast, dark forest that stretched beyond the city walls. The towering trees, their thick branches intertwined, seemed to whisper as the wind passed through them. Naima, hesitant but strangely drawn to him, followed. She had known this night would come, though she could not say why. The promises of her marriage to Ekon had not been about riches or titles, but something far deeper, something she had yet to understand. But now, as she ventured further into the forest, she felt a strange unease settle within her chest. The deeper they walked, the darker the path became. The trees loomed taller, their trunks thick and gnarled, casting long shadows in the moonlight. The air grew cooler, the silence around them deep and heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "Where are we going?" Naima asked, her voice barely above a whisper, though the quiet was unnerving. Ekon did not look at her as he walked but spoke with a calmness that echoed through the stillness. "To the place where truth slumbers, princess. To the place where the veil between pride and humility is lifted." Naima felt a shiver run down her spine, but she did not question him further. She trusted him in a way she could not explain, though uncertainty still clung to her heart. The forest felt alive, watching them with unseen eyes. The usual hum of night creatures was absent, and the very air seemed thick with mystery. After what seemed like an eternity, they arrived at the edge of a vast clearing, and there, hidden beneath the roots of ancient trees, lay a cave. It was not the cave of legend, nor was it the place she had imagined. There were no jewels or treasure, no signs of grandeur. It was simply a dark opening in the earth, an entrance to a world untouched by time. The air around it felt different, heavy, still, almost as if the cave had been waiting for them. Naima's heart began to race. She had heard the stories of places like this, hidden, sacred spaces where the truth could be revealed to those willing to face it. And yet, she had never imagined that she, the perfect princess, would ever step foot in such a place. Ekon stopped at the entrance and turned to face her. His expression was unreadable, but there was a glint of something ancient in his eyes. Slowly, he reached up and removed his cloak. As it fell to the ground, Naima gasped. Before her stood not a man, but a creature of great power. Ekon had shed his human form to reveal the truth beneath, a towering serpent, sleek and dark, its scales shimmering like obsidian in the moonlight. Its body coiled around itself, radiating a terrifying grace, its eyes glowing like molten gold. The serpent's fangs gleamed in the dim light, and Naima felt her heart catch in her throat. For a moment, she stood frozen in horror. The man she had married, the one who had spoken so kindly to her, was now an ancient being, a creature of legend. The weight of her mistake, of her own pride, suddenly pressed down on her like an unbearable weight. Ekon, or the serpent who had once been Ekon, spoke with a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the earth itself. "You have come to face the truth, Princess Naima," it said, its voice smooth and cold, yet laced with an ancient wisdom. "Your pride has bound you to a world of illusion, a world where you believed you were above others, where you thought yourself flawless. You must choose, princess, face the truth and free yourself, or remain a prisoner of your vanity for eternity." Naima's legs trembled beneath her, and her breath caught in her throat. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The serpent's words rang in her ears, and she realized with a growing sense of terror that everything she had believed in, her beauty, her perfection, her sense of superiority, was nothing more than an illusion. The truth, in all its harshness, was now before her, staring her in the face. The serpent's glowing eyes locked with hers, and she felt her pride begin to crumble, piece by piece. The realization was crushing. She had been living in a world built on her own image, a world where no one had dared to challenge her. And now, the truth was here, in the form of a serpent, a being who had come to strip away the lies she had woven around herself. Naima stumbled backward, panic rising in her chest. "No," she cried out, her voice trembling. "This cannot be. I am the princess, I am perfect." But the serpent's eyes bore into her, its presence overwhelming, and it spoke again, its voice like a deep rumble from the earth. "You were never perfect, princess. Your pride has kept you blind. Now, you must face the truth of who you are. With a cry of terror, Naima turned to flee. But the ground beneath her feet shifted suddenly, the earth rumbling as if responding to the serpent's command. The very soil seemed to swallow her as the cave's entrance opened wide, dark and hungry, pulling her toward it. No, she screamed, trying to steady herself, but the force was too strong. The ground buckled, and she felt herself falling, tumbling into the abyss. The serpent followed her, its massive body coiling around her, blocking any chance of escape. With one final scream, Naima was swallowed by the darkness. The cave closed behind her, sealing itself with a hiss, leaving only silence in its wake. The prison of pride. The cave was dark, cold, and silent, save for the occasional echo of Naima's own breath. It felt as though time itself had slowed, stretching endlessly within the suffocating darkness. The walls, sleek with moisture, pressed in on her from all sides, as though they too were closing in on her. Her feet could not find purchase on the uneven stone floor, and every step seemed to lead further into the depths of despair. The serpent, her warden, coiled around her, its presence ever watchful, ever looming. It no longer needed to speak often, for its silence alone seemed to weigh heavier than any words. But when it did speak, its voice was cold, mocking, and cruel. You thought you were above all, Princess Naima, it hissed, its golden eyes gleaming with contempt. But now you see the truth of your heart. All that you believed, all that you were, is nothing but pride. You were blind to the world, blind to the people who loved you. And now, here you remain, a prisoner of your own making. Naima trembled, her once beautiful face now pale and hollow from her time in the cave. Her skin had lost its luster, no longer glowing like copper under the sun. Her eyes, once bright and filled with the spark of the stars, were now dull, empty, a mirror of the isolation she felt inside. She had no mirror to look into, but she could feel the change within her. The pride that had once carried her, that had made her feel untouchable, was now nothing more than a distant echo. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. Time lost its meaning in the suffocating solitude of the cave. The voices from the world outside, the laughter of children, the songs of birds, the chatter of the market, faded from her memory, replaced only by the constant whisper of the serpent. It taunted her, reminding her of every flaw, every mistake, every moment she had chosen to turn away from love in favor of vanity. At first, Naima had tried to resist. She had refused to believe she was truly trapped. She had cried out for help, for the world to hear her, for someone to come and save her. But no one came. The kingdom she had once ruled, the people who had adored her, had moved on. They had forgotten her, or perhaps they had never truly known her. In this world, the only thing that remained was regret. The kind of regret that clung to her like a second skin, wrapping her in its cold embrace, making it difficult to breathe. Naima wept silently, not just for herself, but for the life she had thrown away. She had chosen pride over humility, perfection over connection. Now, she was alone in this dark, unforgiving place. Then, one day, something changed. A faint light appeared in the distance, a glow that cut through the blackness of the cave like a thread of hope. Naima's heart quickened. It was a light unlike any she had seen before, not of fire or candle, but of something otherworldly, something that felt ancient and powerful. At first, she thought it was a trick of her mind, a dream born from the endless solitude. But as the light grew brighter, she knew it was real. It moved toward her, slowly at first, then with purpose. Naima, her heart racing, stumbled toward the light, desperate for any sign that she had not been forgotten. From the glow emerged a figure, tall and cloaked in a dark robe. His face was hidden beneath the hood, but there was a presence about him, a calm, unwavering energy that seemed to fill the cave. In his hand, he carried a staff, the end of which burned with a strange, unearthly flame. It flickered with hues of blue and white, its light casting long shadows against the cave walls. The figure approached her slowly, and Naima, though weary, found herself standing taller, drawn to the warmth of the flame. "I come to set you free, Princess Naima," the figure's voice called, soft but firm. It was a voice that seemed to resonate with a quiet power, a voice that made her feel both vulnerable and safe. "Your story is not yet over." Naima's breath caught in her throat. She had never thought she would hear those words again, that her story could have another chapter. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, yet filled with desperate hope. "I am a traveler," he replied simply, his gaze steady even though his face remained hidden. "A keeper of paths. I have come to guide you through this darkness, to lead you back to the light." Before Naima could speak, the serpent's hiss filled the cave, cutting through the silence like a blade. "She is mine," the serpent roared, its eyes flashing in fury. "She chose this fate with her own pride. She has no place in the world of light. She belongs here, in this place of shadows and regret." The ground trembled as the serpent's enormous coils unfurled, wrapping tightly around Naima, trapping her in its cold embrace. Its voice was low and menacing as it continued, "She has chosen to live in vanity, to rule alone. No one can save her from the prison of her own making." The traveler stood unflinching, his staff glowing brighter now, as though it drew power from the very earth itself. "She chose pride, yes," he said calmly, his eyes never leaving the serpent. "But now she seeks to choose humility. She has learned the cost of her vanity, and it is this choice that will free her, not the chains you have wrapped around her." The serpent recoiled, hissing in anger, its body shifting restlessly. "You cannot break her free, traveler. She is mine now. I am her warden, and she will remain in this prison forever." The traveler raised his staff, and a brilliant light surged forth, illuminating the cave in a blinding flash. The serpent shrieked, recoiling from the light, its form flickering like a shadow in the presence of such power. Naima, her heart filled with a mixture of fear and wonder, watched as the serpent writhed in agony, the darkness around it beginning to dissipate. "Princess Naima," the traveler's voice called again, steady and warm. "You are not bound to your pride. You are not a prisoner to the past. The choice is yours. Will you let go of the chains of your vanity and step into the light of truth?" For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Naima looked deep within herself. She saw the pride that had held her captive for so long, the walls she had built around her heart. But she also saw something else, the flickering spark of humility, of forgiveness, and of a desire to change. With trembling hands, she stepped forward, toward the light, and toward the possibility of freedom. And as she did, the serpent let out one final, furious hiss before vanishing into the shadows, its form melting away into the very air that surrounded them, the path to redemption. The traveler stood tall, his presence unwavering, as he raised his staff high above his head. The very air around them seemed to tremble with the force of his action, and from the tip of his staff, a great flame erupted. It was unlike any fire Naima had ever seen, not of red or orange, but a burning light of ancient wisdom. The flame crackled and danced, glowing with a fierce, untamed power. It illuminated the cave, casting shadows and light in equal measure, and filled the space with a warmth that was both comforting and powerful. The serpent recoiled, its dark form shrinking from the light. Its golden eyes burned with rage, and with a deafening hiss, it lunged toward them, its fangs bared, its scales glistening with malice. It struck with the speed of a thunderclap, but the flame held firm, its light standing as an unyielding barrier between them. The serpent twisted and writhed, its massive body crashing against the light as it tried to break through. But the flame did not falter. It pushed back, its brilliance growing, pushing the serpent into retreat. She was not born to be a prisoner of her pride, the traveler said, his voice strong, resonating through the cave. Her heart, like any other, deserves a second chance. And this light will guide her, not in chains, but toward freedom. The serpent screeched in frustration, its form wriggling and flickering like smoke. But it could not withstand the force of the flame. The traveler's words rang clear, their weight sinking into Naima's heart. Naima stood there, frozen, her eyes fixed on the brilliant flame. For the first time in her life, she felt something inside her stir, a deep, undeniable truth. The flame touched her heart, and with its light, she saw the full extent of her actions. She saw the faces of the people she had rejected, the suitors she had turned away, the love she had scorned in the name of her own pride. She saw the king's worried gaze, the queen's silent sorrow, and the hollow emptiness she had created in her own heart by placing perfection above all else. Tears welled up in her eyes, hot and heavy. The weight of her choices. The years spent looking only at her own reflection, the blindness to the love and care that had been offered to her, overwhelmed her. She fell to her knees, her voice breaking with the sorrow of realization. "I was wrong," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I should have chosen humility. I should have seen what was before me, and I should have loved, not from pride, but from the heart." The traveler's gaze softened as he watched her. "It is never too late to choose differently," he said gently. "The truth you face now is the key to your redemption. You were not born to live in the shadows of your pride. You were meant for more." As the traveler spoke, the serpent's form began to dissolve. The dark coils that had bound Naima crumbled into dust, the venomous hiss fading into nothingness. The great creature that had once imprisoned her was gone, its power extinguished like a dying ember. The mouth of the cave opened wide, and the darkness receded, revealing the world outside, a world bathed in the warm light of dawn. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of earth and life, and the distant sounds of birds calling filled Naima's ears. It was as though she had been asleep for years, and now, at last, she was waking. With a quiet nod, the traveler stepped aside, his staff still glowing softly. "Come, Princess Naima," he said. "The world outside is waiting for you." The return. As they stepped out of the cave, Naima felt the sun's warmth on her face for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The light was different now, brighter, and she breathed deeply, letting the air fill her lungs, filling her with a sense of clarity and peace. She was no longer the princess who had been consumed by her own pride. She was a woman who had learned, painfully but profoundly, that true power lies not in perfection, but in humility. The traveler, his work complete, nodded to her one last time. "Your journey is just beginning," he said, his voice calm and steady. "The path to redemption is not always easy, but it is worth walking. The greatest treasure lies not in what you possess, but in what you give." Naima watched him turn and disappear into the horizon, his staff fading into the distance. With a new sense of purpose, she made her way back to the kingdom, her steps lighter than they had ever been. She was no longer the proud princess who demanded to be adored. She was a woman who sought to learn, to grow, and to give back the love that had been given to her. When Naima returned to the palace, the king, now old and wise, embraced his daughter, tears of joy filling his eyes. He saw the change in her, the light in her heart that had not been there before. He had waited so long for this moment, for the daughter he had feared was lost to return to him, not as the perfect princess, but as a woman who had truly understood the meaning of love and humility. The kingdom rejoiced as well. The people who had once feared or envied her now saw her for who she truly was, a leader who was willing to serve, who chose humility over pride, and who shared the wisdom she had gained through her trials. No longer did wealth or status divide the people. Instead, they worked together, united in love and respect, as Naima took her place not on a throne of gold, but among them. Naima planted gardens and built homes, sharing her knowledge and her heart with those in need. She became a teacher, a listener, and a guide, showing others the same humility that had saved her. She spent her days walking among the people, not as a ruler, but as a servant of the people.